Thanks, everyone. So glad to be here with you today. We're here with Tommy Gibbons, CIO, the Chief Innovation Officer of Hempitecture. They are currently live on WeFunder, but not for long. Tomorrow's the closing day. They've raised over $1.7 million so far, and time's running out in order to join them in this round. But the purpose of today's call is to have you ask your questions. So if you have any questions, and later we're going to be using the Q&A button down below, not the chat. So if you have your questions, feel free to add them at any time, and we'll look forward to answering them. Last thing before I turn it over to Tommy is to say that this is any alternative investment is regulated by the SEC. And because of that, we have some things that we won't be able to talk about today, specifically forward-looking statements or deal terms. But if you head over to the WeFunder page, you can learn all about it. You can also ask your questions there on the discussion board. So, okay, well, I think that's it for housekeeping things. Tommy, let's hear about Hempitecture.
Absolutely. Thank you, Abby, for the introduction, and welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here. Like Abby said, my name is Tommy Gibbons. I am the co-founder and chief innovation officer at Hempitecture, and I'll explain exactly what we do at Hempitecture later today. But I just want to say thanks again for tuning in or playing the replay if you're catching us at a later time. This is really important. Whether you choose to deploy capital into Hempitecture or not, you're doing the diligence process to make sure that you can make an investment with conviction. When my career started out of college, I worked at Goldman Sachs in investment banking, and it was my job to be diligencing companies and helping investors find the right businesses to deploy capital into. So it's actually an honor to be on this side of the process and hear your questions, hear your responses about what we've built at Hempitecture, and hear what we can do to really make ourselves the most investable business possible, because I think we're at a great inflection point for where we are. And I like to refer to us as a coiled spring with a lot of potential energy ready to explode. And I'll explain exactly why that is. But don't be shy. Like Abby said, throw questions in the Q&A. I promise I will stay on here as long as my laptop battery can, or until the last question is answered. I won't be going anywhere. So I want to make sure everybody's question gets answered. There are a few things I have to stay tongue-tied about, but I'm pretty easy to get a hold of offline if you'd like to talk to me one-on-one and follow up further, or have a question that perhaps I can't answer due to SEC regulations in this format. So again, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a part of Hempitecture. And I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to ask. So without further ado, let me share a couple slides here to kick us off. Great. So here we go. Reminder: this is our final Q&A. The investor round closes in a little bit over 24 hours. So get that investment reservation in, sign that contract, then fund your investment, and you'll be an investor and an equity holder in Hempitecture. Quite exciting. So who is Hempitecture? What are we doing? Well, as you could probably guess from the name, hemp and architecture together, we are a building material manufacturer. We make those sneaky building materials that hide in the walls behind us and all around us. And the purpose of our products that live between drywall and really your weather-resistant barrier and plywood on the outside is to improve the thermal and acoustic comfort of our homes. So these materials are very important for saving energy, reducing sound transmission, and overall providing a comfortable living space that we can breathe, work, and live in. So I think insulation is one of the most underrated products for saving energy in our environment, because every home needs them. And you can see we make rigid board, cavity bat insulation, carpet underlayment, a blow-in loose fill insulation product. Basically every single product the big guys make, we make them with hemp fiber. And then you can see on the right a product I'm going to get to in a little bit, Hemp Wool Plus, which is going to be a very, very important product that's going to help us explode our growth, and that our fundraisers and investors are helping us develop today. So I think a good place to start is, hey, why do we need to reinvent insulation? Why did they need to reinvent ICE combustion engines with electric vehicles? Well, our society's kind of changed a lot in the past 25, 30 years, and we're taking a new lens to the products and technologies we use. Not only do we think about their efficacy, but we think about what's their carbon footprint, what's their resource circularity profile, what's their toxicity and potential to off-gas or harm environment. We're really considering a lot when we think about our supply chain of food, materials, and technology that we use. And that's really the differentiator of our products. Our products made from industrial hemp offer a industry-leading carbon footprint. So when you have projects that are looking for the most sustainable reaching for the most sustainable products to use, it really benefits them to use products that are bio-based, that have a negative carbon footprint, that have the ability to sequester more carbon from the atmosphere than they emit in their production. Basically, every green building project now is looking for, I don't just want solar panels or to make fancy use of my rainwater. I really want to think about the concrete, the windows, the wood, the insulation, the roofing membranes. Everything has a value that contributes to either a carbon emission or a carbon reduction. And the fact that we're on the reduction side of that balance really separates us from the rest of this industry and gives us immense potential to disrupt the existing incumbents. So not only is it important that we have a raison d'etre that's carbon negative, but I think probably the most important thing you can look for as an investor is, what has the traction been of this company? We didn't start this yesterday and say, hey, it's time to fundraise. We've been building this business for over 8 years together. We started our first fundraise in 2022 when we were just a reseller of this insulation material. And then 5 months after closing our round, we became a manufacturer of this material. It was a huge step function in growth. And we're about to have another step function in growth after this fundraising round. But in between these 2 rounds, we've accomplished a lot of things that I think you guys would be very proud of. We've launched new products like our carpet underlayment, our plant panel rigid board, fiber fill, our loose fill blow-in product. We've received immense state and federal funding from NYSERDA, $1.1 million of non-dilutive capital. That means our equity holders do not get diluted from that $1.1 million injection. Same thing with the $8.4 million Department of Energy grant to build a insulation manufacturing facility in Tennessee. We'll talk about that opportunity as well, which is really exciting for our business. And then even a $1 million grant from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, who was so supportive of our project proposal that they are reimbursing our costs for up to $1 million, which is another way to really supercharge the capital injected in us from this round with these non-dilutive sources to make sure your dollar goes further. We also have supplied materials with our lead investor from both the first round and second round, Onyx Homes, with a mentor and board member, Michael Marks, who's been very, very helpful and instrumental in directing and helping our company grow. We've won awards for our products, and we've even expanded into new industries like cold chain packaging, mattresses, geotextiles, and we'll talk about what those industries and the potential addressable market those industries hold. And then finally, when it comes to selling building materials, we're really knocking the ball out of the park, growing our revenue year over year, showing strong demand for this product, intense product market fit, and the ability to really have a game-changing insulation product that grows rapidly when it comes to revenue and sales. So a lot of times people think about, well, okay, you started a company, but it's not Bitcoin or crypto, or it's not AI based, or it's not robotics based. There needs to be technology. And I want to call out this point that even though it seems like insulation is old school and dusty in some ways, we are really bringing a new innovative technology lens to this industry. Of course, hemp fiber is a technology in itself that's been reintroduced to American society. Building materials are just one application of hemp fiber. There's hemp fiber clothing, textiles, there's hemp food products, there's hemp medicinal products, of course. So this is a new technology that we are actually applying to the building materials sector. 2, the way we turn this fiber and manipulate it and improve its properties to turn it into a high-performing building material, well, that's a proprietary technology process that we've developed and perfected as well. So that's a second piece of our technology offering that we have. And then 3, and probably our most important, and I really encourage anyone who's diligent in our company to log on to that URL you see there, is we've revolutionized how you buy building materials. In the old days, people could either go to a few big box retailers or buy through subcontractors their products. It's kind of like buying cars from dealerships. Ford Motor Company, they sell the car to the dealership sells the car to you. Well, nowadays, people go and buy cars online. They know what car they want. They know where they need it to arrive. They know how to shop online and do their research online. And we're bringing that same philosophy to building materials, where customers can log on, say, hey, I need this many square feet for my attic rebuild, and I want this SKU that you have, and this is my shipping address. They're shown an instantaneous quote, and then they can click purchase. That books the shipment on the back end, and they're off and running, getting their installation to their job site. If a building materials company that had, one of the big guys that had been around here for 50 years were to restart today, I'm very confident they would try and follow this method because it's extremely helpful in preserving your margin, staying away from distributors. It's really helpful in controlling your price nationwide, right? We set the price, we don't sell to someone else. And it's really helpful in knowing your customer and making sure that you're having ads and marketing that reach a customer, has a positive ROI on your ad spend, and you can deliver the highest quality service because you're carrying the paper all the way through the transaction. And when you're a small team like us, being able to harness software, APIs, artificial intelligence to answer all the questions, to help all the customers with their transactions, that's what allows us to have explosive growth. Being a durable consumer goods manufacturer of staple products that also has the ability to use software to supercharge their sales map all over the country, that's the recipe of combining hard tech with new software that, in my opinion, is very much a winning formula. So I really hope people understand that and have questions, if any further, about our D2C platform. And then we're also out here expanding industries. So we touched on the building materials. That's exciting. We've seen incredible growth. Our plant panel, rigid board, continuous insulation products that provide a complete monolithic envelope, those have really had a lot of traction this year. We can't believe how much of that product we're selling, how popular it is. But we've also found other addressable markets that have increased in popularity. We make a lot of cold chain packaging. So think about shipping food or cosmetics or medicines that need to have inertia and temperature control inside the box. Well, we have a great renewable, low cost, highly efficient insulation liner product that we can use. And then you see automotive here. A lot of car parts, including Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche, use hemp fibers for lightweight decarbonized parts. The United States is really just at the forefront of that. We'll talk about in a little bit. That Tennessee grant award that we've received is enabling us to enter the automotive industry, which is extremely exciting given the margins and potential there. And then you look at other industries like packaging and consumer goods. So the nonwovens industry, and my business partner is actually speaking, accepting an award at a nonwovens conference in Miami. That's why I'm wearing the suit today, not just for everybody joining here, but I'm happy to wear a suit for you guys as well. We're at a nonwovens textile conference and people are approaching us nonstop saying, our customers want sustainable products. They're done with the polyesters. They're done with the polypropylenes. They want natural fibers that can be non-toxic, non-petrochemical based, but high performing and long lasting. And that's what hemp fiber really is great for. There's only a handful of natural fibers we have access to in North America. You're thinking about cotton, sheep's wool, of course, timber. Hemp fiber is really the one that's very easy to cultivate on the same acreage year after year, which makes it a great input to consumer good textiles, whether it be bedding, furniture, automotive seats. There's all sorts of possibilities in the consumer goods market that we're really excited about. So not only are we getting a toehold in building materials, we're now starting to filter out and expand to all these other markets where hemp fiber has the ability to offer a sustainable solution versus what's currently available. And then there's the potential for huge amounts of costs and additional carbon savings. So this is kind of a mock-up of what Tennessee is going to look like. So where we are today and how really we earn more money for our investors is we compress our COGS and increase our revenues. Well, manufacturing in Idaho, which we do today, is great, but manufacturing in Idaho and Tennessee and New York State is exceptional because that allows us to have roughly the same margin nationwide and still sell to Florida and still sell to California, still sell to Massachusetts, still sell to Ohio, Pennsylvania, just like we do today, using locally produced building materials made from locally grown fibers. That means low cost, low carbon, high customer service, low lead times. And what you're seeing here is a mock-up of a plant design that really is quite innovative. Today, we are the largest buyer of hemp fiber in America. So we buy it as a commodity from a couple different suppliers. In the future, We are going to buy the straw biomass from the farmer, bring it into our facility, process it into usable hemp fiber, turn the usable hemp fiber into insulation and other value-added products like the packaging and automotive I mentioned, and then ship that out to our distribution network, all under one roof. That means there's no additional shipping, there's no additional margin to pay to a supplier for the hemp fiber. We can actually use the waste of the hemp fiber from the processing to turn it into syngas and biochar for additional carbon savings, so that it's an energy neutral production process. And then we use trucks as little as possible. We use rail because it's cheaper and less carbon. And every little bit of carbon savings when we go to a big university or a corporation or a government or state federal employee building, they're trying to reach for low embodied carbon materials. When we come to them with a low carbon product, it makes their choice quite easy. It makes us really the best opportunity for them. So that's where we'll leave it, and we'll open it up to questions. And I can revisit any of these slides at any time. I just want to say there's a short amount of time left. This will be the last chance for retail investors to participate in our equity crowdfunding round. I feel great about this. My mother, my friends, they are invested at the same terms that everyone else can invest in. The people that supported us from the first round, they did an incredible job. Without their investments, there would not be hemp insulation manufacturing in the United States. So your investment is making change happen, as well as going towards a business that is rapidly growing and expanding and has the ability to deliver value in return for you guys. So I just want to thank everyone who's tuning in and listening to us. I think you're doing, like I said, the exact right thing. You're diligencing. It's like walking through an open house that's on your street. You might not buy the house, but it's great to get a reference of where things stand. And that's the deal. I'm an investor as well. I invest in individual companies. I invest in funds. And I really want to make sure that we provide the most assurance, the most transparency and clarity, because every person that we've brought in as an investor has turned into an advocate for us. They've turned into someone who has advocated for our products, advocated for our company. And that's been really the best cycle that propelled us to where we are today and the growth we've seen. So thanks again for tuning in. I'm going to stop the screen share for a moment here, and let's open it up to the Q&A and see what you guys have to ask.
Great news. We're getting lots of questions in. So I think let's start with an easy one. When was the first round of the investment opportunity?
Yeah, great question. So the first round was closed in April 2022, or really May 1st of 2022. So we were bootstrapped up until then. People said, "Who funds you guys?" I said, "Our customers. We have incredible sales that we use to reinvest in the business." And we started as a reseller. And we realized that, hey, if we want to supercharge this, we need to be manufacturing this product in the United States. So we took the capital from our investors in May of 2022. And then by December of 2022, we were selling insulation off that line. That's a very fast time to go from receiving capital to having commissioned a manufacturing plant and making sellable product. Too often I see companies that get into manufacturing, they raise capital, maybe some or not as much as they needed to, and they never even get to that manufacturing stage, and they kind of die in that valley of validation. So we are so proud to have not only been able to raise that capital in 2022, but get to production. And now this round of capital, we have a smaller need, is to invest again in that facility to develop that hemp wool plus fire rated product that can go into commercial buildings and be ICC ready, which is going to be huge for unlocking sales for us.
A follow-on to that, what are some of the biggest reasons other investors have decided to come on board?
That is a really good question. And honestly, it's not ambiguous at all, because WeFunder is really fun that you get to leave a note as to why you invest. Could you imagine if you were trading the stock on the New York Stock Exchange and you had to put like a little comment section as to why you bought or sold the stock? It'd be craziness. So let's think about some of the most common reasons. Well, a lot of people are in the construction industry and they say, all the materials I've used are terrible. I used your product. I love it. I want this to be the future. So it actually comes from people, I always say, like, we get to choose, consume what we want the future to look like, right? If you're in your neighborhood and there's an Italian restaurant that you don't like at all, Well, don't eat there, because if you eat there, you're giving them money and they're going to stay in business longer. Eat at the restaurants you like. And so that's honestly where a lot of our investors come from. They love our products. They want to see us thrive. They're worried about the other manufacturers of foam-based, mineral-based, or fiberglass-based installations, and they know that this has the potential to be extremely disruptive. So that's kind of the reoccurring theme I see from our investors, is they feel like, hey, this worked in Europe. It's time for this to work in America. They want to be first to the people in the hemp industry who are pioneering and laying out capital and devoting careers to making this happen. And that's the feedback we've gotten overwhelmingly from them.
I'm seeing a few questions in here on things that we won't be able to answer, specifically the investment minimum. But it's really quite easy. You can check out the WeFunder page. I've put the link in the chat there. So if you have any questions about deal terms specifically, WeFunder is your place. So, but following on that, have you considered teaming up with Zenny Homes to insulate their houses?
Zenny Homes, I'm not familiar with. So I can't say that we haven't. We do. I mean, our lead investor is a modular home builder, and that's really great because they have a stake in us and they want to see us succeed so we can be their primary supplier of insulation. I think modular housing is a huge opportunity for us because it's one customer in one stationary place, and our products install great inside. When you install a spray foam insulation, you have to shut down that house for 3 or 4 days because of allegedly the off-gassing, takes that much time to subside. Who knows if it ever really does. Our products are completely harmless to use inside, cut inside, install inside. So they're very installer friendly. And the modular builders are the ones who are being very intentional with their product choices. So we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of the West Coast modular builders. And I expect that will be a big customer of us in the future. But really the linchpin is getting that ICC code compliant product that has the embedded fire rating in it. And so we've already purchased, that's what everyone's capital is going towards. That is what these funds are going towards, is the purchasing of this equipment for our treatment line to make sure these fibers are fortified and improved so that they can go in any commercial or modular type construction from here on out.
There are two questions to follow on that. One,
Yeah.
which modular houses? I don't know if you can say, but the other one says, are there any notable partnerships that you can share that reflect the company's momentum?
Yeah, there certainly are. Which modular houses? Okay. I don't want to completely spill on customers. I mean, there's a few. I don't want to completely spill customer names, but I know there's someone on my street, in fact, who and I live in Idaho, and our factory's in Idaho, and so you can don't dox me here, but this is where I live, and there's someone on our street who had their home built in the Pacific Northwest in Washington in a modular construction. And it was kind of ironic because the installation traveled from Idaho to Washington to be installed in the manufacturing facility. And then they put all the wall panels on a flatbed truck and laid out. And then they brought them back to Idaho to be erected. And I was like, wow, that installation really traveled a long way to end up back in Idaho. The second question was about our partners. And there are a lot. So in the cold chain packaging industry, we have partners that reliably send us purchase orders for that type of packaging insulation I showed you. And then I also look at our partners on the state and federal side. The NYSERDA not only has an interest in supporting and funding our manufacturing, they have a huge interest in being a consumer of our product. So they are really pushing bio-based materials as a decarbonization solution for retrofitting New York. And the Department of Energy is doing a similar thing at the federal level. They are trying to push the industry towards bio-based because of the carbon savings. And so not only are they helping fund our manufacturing, but they want to be a big consumer of our product as well. And so they've helped introduce us to customers, find large projects to sell our materials into. So we really have a lot of assistance from different organizations we've encountered along the way.
Okay, this was a bit of a different question, but
Sure.
one of your current investors was they were expecting to attend an event on the 17th of April. And the question was, did it get rescheduled or what happened there? But anyway, I know you were so passionate in talking about how important your investor base is to you, so I wouldn't want to ignore this question.
Oh yeah, every question's getting answered. That's my commitment. Okay, so there's an event on the 17th of April. Was it a Greener Guild webinar?
It's called
That's
Reflecting on 14 Months of Momentum.
Oh, yes. Okay. That was an awesome presentation that my business partner, Maddie, gave with Leah from King's Crowd. So, King's Crowd, another partner I didn't mention, they actually evaluate every single Reg CF opportunity out there across all the platforms, and they give them a rating. And we got a 4.5 out of 5, which they tell us is one of the highest ratings they've given. And their personal team members at King's Crowd invested personally in our business, as well as the King's Crowd Fund. So that was a small webinar, just kind of thanking them for their support and allowing them to express why they felt like this investment was so promising and why they loved the deal that was at hand here. So that was a webinar, and you can replay that on LinkedIn. Go to my business partner, Matty Mead, go to his, and I actually watched it coming over here. I was like, I was on a bus and I put it in my ear because it was just kind of a casual ride listen. And it really is good because Leah gives a really good perspective. We're obviously in this seat every day, and I know things Hempitecture like the back of my hand. But it was interesting to hear an outside investor's perspective who looks at a ton of crowdfunding deals, and she knows where companies should be, where they'd expect to be, the terms they raise at, and to have not only her company's capital invested in us, but her personal capital invested in us. She's only said she invested in 5 companies personally ever in the regs after diligencing thousands. So it was really a badge of honor to earn her investment as well. So yeah, check it out on LinkedIn.
So Pauline, very sorry that the other event was missed, but I'll get the link for you in the chat and I'll drop it here momentarily. So sorry about that, the misstep on that other one. Okay, following on that, where do you source your materials?
Yeah, great question. So like I said, we're the biggest buyer of hemp fiber in the United States. We buy hemp fiber that's grown in Montana and Idaho. So for us, it's really important to have about a 700-mile radius of supplying because 1, that makes our shipping costs lower, and 2, that makes the carbon footprint lower. The idea is not, hey, we're going to produce a really sustainable material, but we're going to import the hemp from the Philippines. No, that doesn't make sense. So we want to use local materials. Now, when we expand to Tennessee, when we expand to upstate New York, we'll be drawing on the hemp fiber supply chains in those regions. And so it's really exciting to see like where Hempitecture goes, farmers win because farmers get to grow the crop and find a market to sell it into. So that's really kind of the exciting thing about us expanding.
This next one is a 5-part question.
Bring them on. I want all 5.
Yeah, all right. Is your $8.4 million DOE under contract yet?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is a very good question. So it is obligated, but it has not been dispersed. Now, the way these DOE contracts work is they're milestone based. So every time we achieve a milestone and kind of de-risk the project in some set, they grant a portion of the award. So it is a 3-year contract performance period. And then so we'll earn bit by bit as we work through that milestone schedule. Of course, we don't need the capital all at once. So it kind of works that it's metered out that way. Now, the DOE is going through a lot of turmoil. I'm not going to hide that fact, right? There was a freeze on a lot of federal grants and awards. That freeze is starting to thaw. And so they are starting to get out. The project wasn't supposed to start until mid-2025 anyway. So we're still fine. But it is a matter of getting the DOE, new administration, the new officials in the DOE to green light and allow the project to start. So, that is full transparency. We're very confident that that will go through. It may get delayed slightly just as they're juggling all of the awards and getting people through the approval pipeline. But that's the status there.
Is your $1.1 million NYSERDA award under contract?
Yes, it is. And that's actually been dispersed up to, I believe, $500,000, $600,000 so far. And so that has been dispersed, and that's another milestone-based award. So we have another roughly $500,000 to draw from that contract. But there's a second NYSERDA award that we are in the running for. That we basically it's a 2-phased award. The first NYSERDA round 1 was 1.1. This round 2 is 1.5 million. So there's an additional 1.5 million that we could earn from NYSERDA to develop our materials there. And we're confident we'll get it. There's now, I think 5 companies competing for 3 spots. And we're told that we're potentially the furthest along. So we're feeling good about being a candidate for that 1.5 million additional NYSERDA award. And if and when that happens, we'll absolutely make an announcement to our WE funders. But the 1.1 is contracted and it's underway, and roughly 50% of it's been dispersed.
And you'll have to be careful with this question here. What is the total goal, total amount of this capital raise? It might be a deal term that you want to just take a look at on the offering page. You might want to go over to WeFunder for that. Okay, what is your backup plan if you don't meet your investment goal?
Well, actually, we've already met our investment goal. So for this, we're raising a finite amount of capital here for a few reasons. One was people asked us to. A lot of people came up to us and said, hey, I missed the first round. I really want to invest in you guys. And we're like, hey, this is a win. When we pull in these investors, these guys become advocates and help us grow our sales and grow our awareness. So we want to bring in these partners. So we really were only looking for around $1 million to raise. That was going to help us improve the Idaho facility to reach that code compliant commercial grade product. And it was also going to allow us to jumpstart our New York and get into loose fill insulation production. So, we're flexible. We don't want to exclude anybody that still wants to invest. So I don't think we would let anyone come in over, maybe 2 million would kind of be the point where it gets a little bit of a trade-off to give away that much equity at the time. And so, you don't want to take all the capital at once. You want to sort of slowly consume as you go. And slow and steady growth has been the name of the game. People who follow this industry will probably be aware that there was a bankruptcy from a competitor of ours that raised 15 times the capital. And I'm not speaking badly of anyone. I really wish them the best. And I think the bio-based industry works well when everyone succeeds. But you can't just try and explode and throw money at the problem. You kind of need to steadily measure your growth if you want to have a long-term sustainable business. I mean, so even though we've raised 1/10, 1/15 the capital of them, and they're now in Chapter 11, and that's all publicly available, we still outsell them. We still have more customers, more volume of product moving. So it just kind of goes to show you sometimes grassroots, slow and steady is the name of the game.
This next one's quite good. It says, I have 5 main headwinds that I see for Hempitecture.
Cool.
Could you pick one of these and discuss your plans to address that business risk?
Cool.
Okay, 1, slow adoption, hesitancy with new pricier material. 2, hemp supply, unstable raw fiber supply and pricing. 3, big competitors, incumbents may undercut or copy. 4, factory delays, scaling manufacturing. Or 5, cash burn, high funding needs and risk of dilution. Your choice.
All great questions. I'm gonna answer all 5 because I think
nice.
Everyone on the call should hear those. All right, I'm kind of remembering them in the 5th. You want to start?
One is adoption.
Yeah. So, we've grown our sales quite measurably, and we've actually increased price slightly just to try to kind of test where the market is. And so we continue to grow our sales. And honestly, our competitors have increased their prices more quickly. A lot of them had a little bit of a supply shock a couple of years ago, and we're trying to recover from the building boom. And a lot of their energy costs are going up, as well as if they're dependent on foreign materials, which luckily we are not, their input costs are coming up. So even though we are a premium product to say fiberglass insulation, which is the cheapest on the market, we are the most affordable sustainable insulation. So if you were to look at sheep's wool or a denim insulation or a wood fiber insulation, our product oftentimes is the best, lowest cost option out there for anyone looking for a sustainable option. So there's really 2 camps of builders. There's people that want a home that is really just gonna have the lowest pure cost from the purchasing and construction phase. And then there's people that are building, trying to solve for long-term performance, long-term comfort, and long-term sustainability. And I love the fact that the people that are really diligencing their insulation choice, time after time, opt for us, even if we are at a small cost premium. Now, in the long term, and in that Tennessee plant, we talked about how we can compress our costs by actually taking the fiber processing ourselves and doing that under the same roof. Half of our cost is the cost of hemp fiber. And hemp fiber can be grown on any acreage across the United States with very little fertilizer, very little irrigation. And the good news is it's not like timber where you cut down a forest, you got to wait 40 years for that fiber to regrow. For hemp, you cut it down, you harvest it one year, You can grow it right back the next year. So you actually have a very stable domesticated supply of fiber. And that's a very good thing for for scaling, right? So you got more customers, you just scale your acreage. Did that cover question one, I think?
That covers questions 1 and 2 because you touched on
Okay.
hemp supply.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Hemp supply, even though we're the biggest buyer, we haven't exhausted the supply. And I don't know how much more we could buy before we did exhaust the supply. I should ask. We're actually at this conference with our hemp fiber supplier, and so we'll have a conversation with them. And we really want to have them lower the price of the fiber as well for us, because we really think once we lower the price of this, the demand for it is going to get even bigger. Because I think really price would be the only thing that would make someone choose fiberglass over our product on a one-to-one basis. So I do think there's huge potential to ramp up fiber supply. Hemp fiber is grown in Canada as well if we needed to import it, and for some reason the United States was not supplying. But if you look at the most recent USDA hemp report, there's huge growth. Idaho has gotten huge fiber acreage growth. South Dakota has huge hemp fiber acreage growth. Oklahoma, Montana, Kentucky. These are all states that are really have a lot of ag land. Tennessee is chomping at the bit. I get more farmers calling me every day saying, hey, can I grow acreage for you? Can I grow acreage for you? I'm like, pump the brakes, talk to our processor. You can't just drop off a bunch of hemp harvest at our doorstep and think that we're going to buy it. There's a method to this madness. But like I said, we want to expand through the supply chain, become more vertically integrated where we can interface with farmers. They can drop their biomass off at our facility, and then we can turn that through the many steps into insulation.
How about your competitors? Do you have any incumbents that you feel could undercut or copy the product?
Yeah, the fiberglass industry is, we'll name names. These are publicly traded companies, right? These fiberglasses, you got Owens Corning, Knauf, Johns Manville, and CertainTeed. Those are really the four major fiberglass manufacturers. Then you have Mineral Wool. A couple of those companies make mineral wool brands, but you have Rockwool. It's a Danish multinational company that makes huge amounts of rock wool. I would say go to toxicrockwool.com or just Google "say no to rockwool," and you'll learn more about that product than you probably ever thought you could, because it's a very contentious building material that they might not want you to know that, but there's a lot of people that are very upset when Rockwool puts a manufacturing plant in their backyard, given what that means for the local environment. So and then you look at the spray foam guys, and they have a huge, I wouldn't call it, well, I'm going to call it that, skeleton in the closet, basically, in what their manufacturing process is. They're reliant on an input that is overseas. MDI is a huge ingredient to polyiso board that is often imported. And so I'm not sure what their supply chain is going to look like over the next couple of years. But all three of those manufacturers still can't present a solution that's carbon negative. They all take an intense amount of energy, an intense amount of carbon to produce that product. So I would say the biggest risk to our business is people to just stop caring about anything to do with toxicity and carbon. If tomorrow everyone said, you know what, I want the seed oils, I want the polyesters, I want the foams, and I don't want anything natural, then I would say, yes, we have no reason to be around. But I think the trend's going in the exact opposite direction. I think people are waking up and saying, I want materials that are from the earth, that don't have super fancy chemical reactions going on in them, ingredient labels that I can understand, manufacturing processes that I can understand. And that's exactly what, a manufacturing plant you can walk around without a mask and be okay and be safe. An installation on your job site that you can be safe and live around. That's what people are waking up and realizing. So I think all of the trends are actually pushing in the direction that we're going.
Okay, so we've got 2 more sub questions on this question.
Yeah. This is the 5-parter. You get your money's worth.
Yes. Okay. It's a real question. How about factory delays? Have you had any obstacles scaling manufacturing?
And I'll be completely transparent. My business partner is really an engineering aficionado and a savant in a lot of ways. We thought we would be able to embed the fire retardant process in the first line. We thought we had a way to do that would work at scale. It worked, but it didn't allow us to produce material fast. So it was good. We could produce Class A fire rated product, but the volume that the throughput was so limited that we knew we needed to go another route. So this is where we re-engineered and we found a way to treat these fibers in a pre-format that allows them to start at our line already fire rated. Otherwise, yeah, manufacturing's hard. There's a lot of moving pieces, but overall downtime at our facility is extremely, extremely limited. We have a really great team and honestly, I would say read our Google reviews, because not only will you hear about people using our product and loving it, you'll hear about people who showed up to our factory to pick up their product and thought that our forklift operator was the coolest guy around. And, they loved the vibe in our building. They thought everyone was working with a smile and happy to be there. I mean, how often do you see, a manufacturing line with people that are stoked to be working and stoked to be getting these products out there? And I think that's a huge cultural difference inside of our company. But yeah, manufacturing is difficult, but I give a lot of credit to my business partner because we've been able to ride that wave really well. Our partners in Europe who provided the equipment for us that we kind of re-engineered and retrofitted, they were huge. And like I said, I mean, you don't go from closing your investment to commissioning the manufacturing line and producing sellable material in 5 months, hiccup free, but you get there through a ton of perseverance and knowing that there's going to be challenges and every challenge has a solution. So I appreciate that question because I won't gloss over and say that manufacturing, it's not like this stuff comes out of the box and you plug it in and you're running. It takes a ton of effort and a ton of work to get it there. But we're there and we're producing it and we're selling it and the customers are loving it. So I'd say all's well that ends well.
So on the cash burn side of things, do you have high funding needs, or how should investors feel about the risk of dilution?
Yeah, good question. Good question. And I just, Abby, you just raise your hand if I'm touching, because I'm someone that doesn't like to keep their lips sealed when I just like transparency. Hempitecture has operated at a loss, and you'll see that in the financials for the last couple of years. Not a huge loss, but a small marginal loss as we scale up. This quarter, we expect to be break even. And we just had our biggest month of sales, huge by actually a wide margin in April 2025. So biggest in company history. We have our biggest amount of toll manufacturing sales this quarter. So we're expected to be break even from Q2 forward. And that really opens up a lot of doors because we can kind of sit back and take capital on terms that work for us, in terms that we find good in the long run. Now, I also want to say, investing, take a look at our balance sheet. And I won't get into specifics, but you'd see that this business does not carry many creditors really at all. So even though you guys are equity investors, you still have that claim. And all right, so I know we're talking about terms a little bit. You're still first in line for any downside risk. So this isn't like you put an investment in, say, a software app where there's no fixed assets that the business owns. We have a very healthy balance sheet that there's really downside protection to a degree to our investors, which I feel great about. Now going forward, we're looking for grants, state funding programs. That's really accessible to a business like us because, hey, we're equity holders too. We want to limit the amount of equity we take as much as possible to make sure you guys get as big a return and as much for your dollar as you can. So maybe we will look at other types of financing that's non-equity, but there really isn't an intention for any type of dilution that would be detrimental to equity holders anytime soon. We want to take capital on our terms. That's why it was super important for us to get to profitability. It's why it's important for us to manage our investments. Yeah, you're right. Expanding a manufacturing business takes investment in capital. I would be very tuned into our ROIC. What is our return on invested capital? But comparatively, setting up one of our manufacturing plants is a fraction of the CapEx of setting up a mineral wool or fiberglass plant. And I think that's the model. Setting up one big fat manufacturing plant in the middle of the country and trying to ship it to all sorts of parts, all corners of America, that's not a model that's going to work. A model that'll work is having a lightweight manufacturing facility that you can regionalize different areas so that the cost of shipping, which is a big cost in installation, installation is like the biggest volume choice you'll probably make in your life, what goes in your building's walls. And so you really want to be producing it locally using locally sourced fibers. And that's the name of the game for us.
Gosh, we have a lot of questions here. It's very
Oh, man.
exciting. I just love the community of people who are asking these questions. I'm
Thank
going to
you guys.
consolidate a few of them that are on the same theme.
Okay.
And you kind of
Cool.
touched on it a little bit a few minutes ago, Tommy, but two questions about hemp farming. Okay, I'm
Okay.
thinking of turning one of my farms into a hemp farm.
Okay.
From where do you buy your hemp? And then how does a farmer become a supplier for you?
Cool. We're naming names again just because we have to. If you want to become a hemp farmer, and I will never talk out of depth. I don't know much about farming. I really don't. I've seen hemp be harvested in the farm. I've been to the Cornell Ag School where they're testing different varieties of seed genetics. I see what's possible, but I'm not going to pretend like I spent a season, watching the hemp grow and really, I've visited many fields, but I'm not an expert. What I would say is the experts are out there. IND Hemp from Fort Benton, Montana, who we're at this trade show with right now, is a huge, huge advocate for the industry. They have a trade show field day. I don't know where the question is located in the United States, but if you can get up to Montana for their field day in the summer, it really is an all-encompassing education about the seed genetics, what you need to grow, harvest, and sell your product. So I would say if you want to farm, make sure you know who your end buyer is beforehand. Our other partner, Idaho Hemp Processors in Eastern Idaho, if you're in that region, I would say reach out to them. I do get that question a lot. I'm actually thinking of making a page on our website that we can just kind of direct all the interested farming inquiries, because we don't want these people to go away. We just want to say, hey, maybe not right now. We have an answer for you, but in a couple of years, watch closely, and then we can turn on the farming when we're in charge of the processing. So yeah, make sure you have a processing solution. There are a lot of universities that have very good hemp programs: Kentucky, Tennessee, Cornell in the state of New York, Murray State. There was another one in New York. I actually visited the professor, and so I hope she's not watching. I can't remember her name. What was her name? Taylor, I want to say. So yeah, I would say see if your local, talk to your state ag department. Some states are a little bit trickier with, they want higher licensing costs or, more documentation of your acreage. Some states are much easier. The good news is it's getting easier to grow hemp in the United States. A big question was the THC permissible level. So 0.3% was kind of this arbitrary line that they were drawing. Now it looks like that's going to float up to 1%. And that's great news for anyone who's growing fiber, because when you're growing fiber, you're not growing it for THC. You're not growing it for flour. Our product has nothing to do with that. You're growing for that biomass, that long, sturdy biomass. And so the fact that now you don't have to worry about your THC threshold, or the plant running hot, as they call it, means there's not a risk that you're going to spend all summer growing something that you have to destroy. Or if it does run hot, they're still going to let you send it to us because they know that we're not consuming anything. We're just turning this into fiber that we can turn into insulation. So the good news is the tailwinds for growing hemp in the United States are just getting easier and easier. And you can reach out to us, sales@hempitecture.com, if you want to talk about that a little bit more, because it's a valid question. There are resources out there that can be really helpful in learning about growing hemp fiber.
Is there enough hemp being grown, or can the amount ramp up fast enough for growth?
Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg situation. Right now, it is a right amount of acreage. The worst thing that could happen is if everybody switched over to hemp fiber today, and yeah, we got a couple pennies per pound today, but then nobody made money. And so they were like, I'm not doing this again. So you really do want to kind of stage your acreage in. Like I said, we have not hit the bottom of our suppliers' barrel, even though we are the biggest buyer. I don't know if they have biomass just stored beyond, but they've never come to us and said, hey, we're out of hemp fiber. We've always been able to source it. We've always been able to buy it. So I don't think we're close at all to reaching the limits of the supply chain. And like I said, it's just a matter of growing more acreage. And if we did, they would just say, all right, I think the more limiting factor is not the acreage being grown to produce biomass. It's the throughput of the processing machines to turn that biomass into fiber that they sell to Hempitecture. So what that means is if things really got in a pinch and we sold, they're going to redo the Pentagon and they're going to build it all with hemp wool insulation. Awesome. We need a ton of hemp fiber. I think what they would say is, we're just going to process more shifts. We're going to process on weekends. We're going to, ramp up the time we spend processing, they have that biomass waiting and ready, is my understanding.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
Um, I'm seeing a fair number of questions about Tennessee. One
cool.
question is, are you active currently in Tennessee? Another one asks if you're currently hiring in Tennessee. And a third question asks your opinion about unionization of hemp workers in Tennessee.
Okay. Um, are we active in Tennessee? Yes, from a standpoint of we sell insulation there, and we actually have a distribution facility in Tennessee. So Mount Juliet, just outside of Nashville. We had a Knoxville facility, but now it's in Nashville. So customers pick up or ship out of there all day, every day. We are evaluating different properties I've made several visits to different properties to be our manufacturing facility. We're kind of deciding between leasing and purchasing there, but we have some really good properties that fit our needs quite well. And honestly, their cost is less than Idaho. So we're not hiring immediately. And then do I think unionization is important for hemp farmers or hemp workers? We are from I'm from a very big, my grandparents were manufacturers, and they developed the first profit share for their workers at their plant. And they always told me about that growing up, how important it was to have their line workers invested in the success of the business. And so we do the very same thing at Hempitecture. Our line workers, these are guys who are working for hourly wage, are earning equity in our business as well. Not a lot, not as much maybe as someone who invests here with a good sized check, but they are sharing in the upside of the long-term success of our business. And I think that's why people, when they show up to our facility, are like, this has a different feel to it. These people are proud of what they do. They're happy to be here. They want success for the company. Some people, on the manufacturing line, they throw a wrench in the stuff because they're like, oh, this company stinks. I hate my boss, whatever. That's not what's happening at Hempitecture. These guys, they love the business, guys and gals. And we share that upside with them in a way where every shift they work, they have the ability to earn a share. So I don't know if that answers unionization, non-unionization. There is some aspects of the DOE award that do involve collective bargaining, project labor agreements. We're going to abide by every piece of that. But at the end of the day, I think we would never stop anything like that. If from a unionization, we would never stop that.
All right, so to pivot a little bit, I have a number of questions about.
Abby, you're doing a great job, by the way, DJing these questions. I know they're just probably all rolling through the chat, and some are similar, and you gotta be like, okay, you got that one, you get that one, but keep going.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a lot of people here asking questions, and I just think that's fantastic. And so I'm trying to make it to kind of flow in a sensible way. A number of them are about fire resistance, but I think it's best if we start with Catherine's question. It sounds like she is a building designer who wants to help the company's growth, which is fantastic. So the question is, how do your products help US certifications such as Living Building Challenge, Living Product Challenge, LEED, WELL, and other certification systems benefit from your products, and how have you marketed to those efforts?
Great question. In 2 weeks, I'll be at the International Living Future Conference in Portland. I'll be speaking on the Bio-Based Materials Day. So I think that's the world we live in. And USGBC LEED accreditation. There's a lot out there that's in the green building space that is kind of between the manufacturer and the homeowner, we'll call it, whether it's a nonprofit, talking about this, or an accreditation agency. And you can't really play. Some of them are pay to play. And so some of them we won't engage with because we just think, hey, our product's sustainable from the cover. You know that. I'm not going to pay you $10,000, $20,000 for you to say that. And I'm not naming names about that. But our products certainly do contribute to LEED because, one, they're USDA bio-based certified. Two, if they're sourced within 700 miles. Three, because we have an EPD to point to. So there are things that check the boxes. I actually think that as green building, and we talked about this before, shifts from being super smart with solar panels and south-facing windows and really smart rain collection. Now that it's shifting towards embodied carbon, there will be more points given for things that reduce the embodied carbon of a building. So I expect that we will get in there, a declare label that says, okay, there's no red list chemicals in here, a health product declaration. We have that. So we're certainly playing with those partners and showing that, our product meets the criteria that they're looking for. But the problem is, people show up in our inbox and say, hey, I created this certification yesterday. Will you pay me $20,000 to say and it's like, come on, people are smart enough to evaluate our product independent of whether or not you're going to give us a thumbs up. So that's kind of a game that you play or you don't play. You name that question named very reputable organizations. So, we are investing with those teams and making sure that they know about us and feel good about promoting us and understand exactly what our manufacturing process is, exactly what our ingredients are, because transparency is the name of the game. That's the name of the game for us.
There are a few questions specifically about fire resistance here and
Sure.
how the fibers are treated
Mhm.
before does that change the natural labeling or like how fire resistant is it?
Mhm.
Can you speak a little bit about fire resistance?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, everything is combustible. If you put it on the surface of the sun, I don't think there's anything on this earth that could withstand that. Maybe I have that wrong. I have to check my table of elements. Our solution is really about being able to achieve a Class A flame spread rating on the ASTM E84. I know that sounds very technical, but that's the test that measures whether or not you're Class A and you can go in schools, universities, multifamily, corporate offices, or you're not. And so that's what we're solving for. We are adding a borate-based solution. Borates are great for treating cellulosic fibers. It's kind of the industry standard. We are experimenting with even better fire retardants, but we want to make sure they meet our cost profile as well as have a bio-based story to them. So think of like crustacean shells are actually a fire retardant source that's being created in the Pacific Northwest. So we've made samples with that perform quite well. But let's assume we're using the borate-based solution for now. That's still red list chemical free. That's still non-abrasive. That's a very common interfacing product. And we're not powderizing it, right? We're treating it with a solution. So it's not going to be like dusty that would get in the air when you install it or cut it. It's really rinsing that fiber, letting that fiber dry, and then starting the insulation manufacturing process.
How does that compare to competing products?
Well, cellulose insulation uses borates. It's the identical fire rated wood fiber installations in Europe. They use borate based fire retardants. It really is the industry standard, and we've looked at like ammonium phosphate. We've looked at a lot of different products on the market and run samples. The idea is if borates aren't too costly, aren't too chemically abrasive, then there's no reason to reinvent the wheel there.
All right, to shift gears a little bit, there are a number of questions related to the investment opportunity.
Okay.
And I think this one kind of encapsulates several of people's questions. So thanks, Mitchell. Can you give us a breakdown of how the investment will be used? Will it be going to develop new technologies, R&D? Will it increase your staffing? If so, in what areas?
Yeah. It's really going towards fixed assets. It's going towards a fiber treatment line that will dunk these fibers and then dry these fibers in a way that produces that fire rating. It's as simple as that. It's about a little under $1 million of invested capital to unlock a huge amount of commercial sales for us. That's why we took the equity investment. That's why we tapped you guys. Again, we said if we spend here, we're going to unlock a huge amount of revenue on the other side of this. So hopefully by the end of summer 2025, we'll be able to have an ICC ES report in hand, a published EPD in hand as a result of that investment. They're making the equipment now. We've already paid down payments on this equipment. So they've been making this equipment since the fall, which has been great. We were able to use company funds that we had already to have them start the equipment. And then, yeah, there could be a little bit of marketing going on in there with the spend. Like I said, we're looking for $1 million. Now we're kind of above that amount. So there will be some excess. And then, the excess will really go towards the New York plant, the New York facility. So it's more CapEx. It's not like this money goes towards operations. It goes towards buying fixed assets and expanding our balance sheet and hopefully expanding our ability to increase revenue capacity. in manufacturing, I wish we were a software app that we could just code it once and sell it a million times. But for us, we're limited by the throughput of our fixed assets. And so we are investing in ways to speed up the throughput. That's actually another big component of our CapEx from this round is we're creating a buffer silo so that we can double the line speed of our machines. So that means for the same personnel costs, for the same rent overhead, roughly for the same energy cost, maybe there's a small increase in marginal energy costs, we're producing twice the material. So we go from producing 30 or 35 pallets a day to 70 pallets a day. That does wonders for our profitability. So these are investments that we think we will get a strong return on. And then, of course, regionalized manufacturing and developing our loose fill insulation product in New York State is the next big investment to realize that return.
A couple more questions here on the investor front.
Please.
Related to like why invest now? In particular, like what does a return on investment provide me with, which I know is a little bit tricky at this stage to outline in too specific terms. What kind of timeline would I see in terms of return on investment is another question here. And I think another one that ties to it nicely is related to any investor perks that you have on WeFunder right
now. Okay. The perks, I feel bummed because we had a really good perk when we launched this campaign, but it's expired. It was the early bird perk. And so I hesitant to even mention it, but we were allowing people to take 20% of their investment and use that towards purchasing our materials. And so that's like, a 20% return right away if you had to buy insulation anyway or wanted to buy our insulation. But that subsided because, we do like to reward people who come in early and reward people who support us early. So our first safe did have preferential terms to this safe. This safe is going to have preferential terms to future safes. That's basically all I'll say. And the way these documents work and why I feel comfortable having family members and friends invest in them is they do have protection that basically the way it's structured that says, no matter what happens in the future, any investor that comes in after today won't get better terms than the investor that came in today. So you guys are getting a return that will be better than someone who comes in later. And that's to support you guys because, every day that we're in business, we really do de-risk what we're doing. And so you guys are coming in earlier, you're taking on more risk. So you're going to get a better return than someone that comes in subsequently. And that's how these investment notes are structured. I did do a video on our website that talks about the safe. It's actually from the first round in a little bit more descriptive terms on different outcomes. Oh, and then you talked about liquidation. I think this is important too, because, we take your capital very seriously. And the fact that, we're stewards and managing and fiduciaries of this capital is very important to us. And I wish we could say, hey, in 5 years, this is exactly what's going to happen. In 10 years, this is exactly what's going to happen. And I can't quite make complete promises there. What I can say is the way to liquidation and return on your capital is really 2 to 3 ways. And we'll talk about the third, but an IPO, a public listing, putting ourselves on an exchange, whether it be NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, or maybe even a kind of an over-the-counter direct listing exchange. That would be a way to grant you guys liquidity to exchange those shares for capital or buy more shares if you wanted. That's one route of kind of having a public listing that allows you guys. And IPOs are huge deals. They are big deals. But there's ways to make it not a huge jump. There's ways to make it not a huge reporting burden. We already go through audits. So, we have our financials in an order already. Like, that's why a lot of private companies are so scared to IPO is they don't want to clean up their financial house and really do an audit. So we've already done that in our company's history. 4 out of our last 5 years were audited for the Reg CF process. The second way is an acquisition. And I don't want to say anything that would either tip conversations that are happening in the background or also give people the thought that we're just trying to make a buck and sell to a high bidder, because that's really not the truth, right? If someone came to us today, and I hate to lose an investor over this, but it's the truth. If someone came today and said, hey, we want to make you guys millions of dollars, we want to get you guys rich, we want to get your investors rich, but the only problem is we're going to shut down your hemp insulation manufacturing because we don't want it competing with us, we wouldn't sell to them. We're here to do this. We're here to make sure this happens. Now, if an acquirer came in, and I can tell you that many different of the large manufacturers have walked through our facility and taken meetings with us for this exact reason. and said, hey, we want to supercharge your business. We think what you're doing is the future. We want to have a piece of this opportunity, and we don't feel like we can do it internally and invest in ourselves, because a lot of these big companies, they're just, it doesn't come across their desk. Oh, now today we're going to go start doing hemp insulation manufacturing, even though we've been doing fiberglass for 60 years. It's not really how the big guys think all the time. But if they came to us with an acquisition strategy that we felt was going to supercharge our ability to grow this industry and grow these materials to make it more ubiquitous in the United States, we would entertain that. And if we did sell our equity, you guys would get a return, and you guys would get your capital back with a return. So those are kind of the 2 to 3 ways. Now, the third way, which is, it would be a little more difficult, is just making money and paying that out to shareholders, paying that out to investors. That's kind of old school nowadays. We've had so many companies that just kind of run, not making money. And yeah, maybe we would need to be publicly traded, so it comes in the form of a dividend, or maybe there's a tender offer where we buy back some of these safes. We put a price out to go buy back the investment, and everyone cashes out with a some return. There's forms there, but distributing earnings to shareholders, that's what companies do. So those are kind of the 3 pathways that I see things going over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's really great that we have options. It's not like there's an acquirer that we need to make or break. This company needs to acquire us or we're going to give up. Not going to happen. It's not like we need to IPO or we're going to be in big trouble. Not going to happen. We have options. We're going to go where we feel is best. My chips are on the same side of the table as you guys. That's all I can say. So I'm working hard to raise the value of your equity, to raise the value of our equity, raise the value of our employees' equity. And that just means create a great business. So I really don't get too concerned with the liquidation, because I think that's going to follow the course it should follow as a result of building a great business. So I'm focused on building the great business part. I wish I could give a defined timeline. If I had to put a thumb in the air, I think we'll probably get an answer in 5 to 7 years on the long run as to what's going to happen with these safes and if they're going to return. It could be sooner. I think the 3-year DOE project performance period is kind of a linchpin that we wouldn't sell ourselves before that term period a little bit, because that's kind of one of the caveats is we need to stay a small business. We need to stay a domestically held business. Otherwise, we would lose access to that funding. But the good news is we've got our options open. It's all about just serving our customers great, keeping our costs low, and expanding our revenues. That's what we focus on.
Lots of great questions here. 2
Cool.
of them in a row said, who is your European partner? Can you disclose?
Who is our European manufacturing partner? Well, I could disclose, and you could just look kind of at pictures of our manufacturing equipment, and it's kind of on there. I don't want to disclose that because if it's asked for someone who's potentially trying to, not that we can really even be copied or emulated. It's an Italian OEM. We use Italian OEMs. They're really good at making textile machinery. They're really good at producing equipment that makes stuff fast. And they have a lot of experience with natural fibers. I got my business partner calling me here on my watch if you guys want to say hi to him, but I'm going to put him off for now.
Yeah, let's get back to these questions here.
Yeah.
Mike has a really hard-hitting one. He said, what is the single largest risk that could disrupt your short-term plan?
Single largest risk that could disrupt our short-term planning. Okay. Maybe I'm just thinking this because someone asked that. One of the 5-parter questions was, what happens if your manufacturing facility, like if we had severe downtime in our manufacturing facility, which hasn't happened. I don't think we've ever been down for more than a day or 2 at most. That would be a problem. We couldn't produce material to keep us in stuff. Although I'd actually think we'd adapt and we would import and resell again if that came to it. If I would say if one of the big guys came in and said, we're dropping $300 million on this industry to build hemp insulation manufacturing, we don't care about being unprofitable for 10 years, 15 years. We're just going to do it because we want to do this. That would be hard to come up against, right? They've got a lot of, we're somewhat of a small boat in a big ocean. when you look at those ocean liners that are big guys. But I don't see them doing that. I don't see anyone making that big of a investment at this industry without the experience. So they would either have to really scale down their investment, which wouldn't really be able to put them in an advantage, or they would have to really make a huge capital investment that they wouldn't see a return on for quite some time. So I think a competitor trying to step into what we do, which I don't think is likely, but that would certainly, if I woke up and read a newsline that said Owens Corning building huge hemp insulation manufacturing plant in Idaho, I would probably say, okay, that needs to be responded to. And then third, boy, another risk. I would say, okay, I think this is a fair one. We are incorporating this fire resistance process. We have high confidence around it. We've emulated this process. We've prototyped it. We've tested the prototypes at third-party labs for performance. If for some reason the actual in situ manufacturing process could not replicate the prototype performance, that would be something that we'd also have to respond to. But I don't think it would sink us. I know how we've reacted to challenges in the past. I think we would engineer and solve. And so that's always how we've been. I mean, sometimes our websites aren't necessarily working. We engineer and solve. Sometimes something at the facility is not working. We engineer and solve. Sometimes a marketing piece isn't working. We engineer and solve. So I'm not sure I see any one thing. I mean, oh gosh, I don't even want to joke about this, but I do think Maddie and myself, and especially Maddie, are extremely critical to the business. So maybe there's some personnel risk if one of us got sick or something like that. But I feel great. I'm measuring my health. I'm eating great. I'm sleeping great. So I think, and Maddie's the same way. We really take care of ourselves. But I do think at this stage there is some personnel risk just because we're really driving this business. But hey, we want to do this for 40 more years. So I don't think there's any risk of following us. And even if that did happen, I still think we're like a cockroach. We're just going to survive. We're just going to survive. We've been doing it for 10 years. I mean, Maddie's been doing it for longer than I have. I started, 2017, 2018 with him. I just don't see something that would make us quit.
You mentioned engaging in other product lines outside of the building industry. What's the timeline on that expansion?
Boy, you have to go in the past. We've already done it, right? So the building industry, we sell hemp wool, we sell plant panel, we sell fiber pad, carpet underlayment. The packaging insulation, we're making that now. We're running hemp fiber packaging. We run cotton fiber packaging. We run hemp cotton, blended packaging. I think the next step that you'll see us, the automotive is going to take a little bit of time to get into. It takes a little bit more end of line equipment that we'll have to add in the Tennessee facility to really get there. But the next step, I think, is getting into the non-woven kind of furniture space, whether it be like mattress pads or seat cushions. Europe is really leaning hard into natural fibers to replace the polyester cushions, the polyester mattresses. We've had a lot of prototype stuff run on our line by big mattress guys. We haven't closed the business yet. I mean, they pay us for the R&D, but I think that would be the next thing. I just look at, my sister works for a company. We're naming names, Boll & Branch. If you ever bought sheets and stuff from them, and so one of their big competitors makes a mattress pad out of coconut fiber. And I pulled this up, and it's got 4.5, 5-star reviews because you put it underneath your mattress, and it's really good at helping wick moisture away. And coconut fiber is a decent fiber, but it's really expensive. And I'm looking at the cost per square foot that they're selling this product at, and it's on their website, sold out with 5-star ratings, and the price that they're charging, I'm like, oh my gosh, we could sell this for 1/100th of the cost, and we can make it for 1/100th of the cost and sell it to them, they'd still make a profit. So I really think we'll probably pick up someone in that space. And they might, the homeowner might not know at all it's a Hempitecture product. We might just get private labeled under a mattress or bedding brand. And that's nothing to say that Boll & Branch is at all involved in this, but these are the conversations that I have when I look at these other industries and the products that they're sourcing. I'm like, if you're going to get a coconut fiber mattress pad from, Greek coconuts, it's really costly for what purpose when there's a hemp fiber one that we could make much cheaper.
Can you share what your profit margins are at the retail or wholesale level?
That's a good question. And It really depends where in the country you're getting it. And so I hope there's no customers on here. They're going to try and bargain with us after I say this. If you're buying and you pick up from our Idaho facility, there's roughly 40% margin on that. And that's huge in the insulation industry. Owens Corning, if you look at their annual reports, they're at like a 6 or 7% profit margin. But if you are in Florida and we have to ship the insulation from Idaho to Tennessee, and then it gets on an LTL, the customer only pays for the shipping from Tennessee. So we have to carry that cost of getting it from our factory to Tennessee. So we had to make a choice a little bit ago, say, hey, do we only want to sell to Idaho and the Pacific Northwest where our margins are really, really good, and maybe we lower our prices and try and aggressively sell to this region? Or do we want to service nationwide and maybe lose a little bit of margin on sales to the eastern part of the eastern seaboard, but at least seed that market so that when we grow and when we develop manufacturing capacity there, they'll be ready for the product. And I think we made the right choice. There's just so much demand in the Northeast, there's so much demand in the Southeast that even if our margin gets cut super thin, it really helps us keep the line running, keep the fiber supply flowing, and just be a big company that has a lot of awareness nationwide by selling to every part of the country. So we did have to make that decision, and kind of it's a trade-off, right? If you only sell locally, then you're going to have great margins. If you're going to sell nationwide, you'll have high volume but lower margins.
How do you see your investor community playing a role beyond just capital?
That's a great question. I think awareness is big, sales is big. We have a Greener Guild ambassador program that a lot of our investors are also members of, and that allows them to get, early access to new product releases, sales commissions, sample kits, allows them to attend trade shows on our behalf and represent Hempitecture and really be affiliate ambassadors of our brand. So that's one way to join, greenerguild.com. You have to apply, and we don't want just kind of random people joining. We want people who are in the building industry, who have the ability to help get our products spec'd. But I would just say help raise awareness, help find other investors. I know we've got only 24 hours left, but I think that's probably the best thing you could do for us is, one, I think it's good for you and for us. If you talk to someone and say, hey, I invested in Hempitecture, or I'm going to share on Facebook that I invested in Hempitecture, what are your thoughts? Well, if you know someone really smart who says, don't do that, like, then maybe that's good feedback. If you, I don't think they'll say that, but maybe they would, and then maybe you would be saved, but I don't think that's what would happen. Or they would say, that's awesome. I want to get involved too. I want to invest too. And when you guys bring in more investors, that just increases our chances of success. That just gives us more capital to run, more ways to win. And so I would say buy our products, spread awareness about us, find more investors for us, and you be as good of an advocate as we could possibly hope for. Maybe leave a 5-star Google review if you bought the product and you're a customer. I always forget to say that. Leave a Google review. That's how people find us. They find us on Google. They find us on the internet.
Yeah, it's real. The building trust starts with the people who know you, right?
Absolutely.
Richard asked a question about the greenerguild.com. Richard, I hope that was a good answer for you there. It sounds like you, as a person rehabilitating homes, would be a good candidate, and I think that they'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and fill out a form on greenerguild.com, and I'm sure people will get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. I think we've got about 60 ambassadors nationwide. There's no territories or anything, so we can let more people come. It's also hempitecture.com/ambassador. I don't know which is easy to remember, greenerguild.com or hempitecture.com/ambassador.
Question here for new investors. Could you give a quick overview of what happens after one invests? For example, what to expect, basics of risk reward, or really anything to help a newbie investor who really believes in the negative embodied carbon business model? Sorry, and just to add to that, 2 questions about average investment amount this round, which I'm not sure if you can share or not.
Oh, I never thought about the average investment amount. I think the quantity of investors is around 1,000 this time, and it was 1,800 the first time. So there's 2,800 people that have come across this and want to be a part of it, which is really encouraging. So I'd have to take that 1,000, and I guess what's 1.7 divided by 1,000, that's 1,700. So that's probably the average investment amount. I know someone asked what the minimum amount is. 100 is the minimum. We'd love to have more, but just to answer that question, I don't know. Yeah, WeFunder will tell you too. And then what to expect. Okay, so you are investing in a safe note. I'm an owner of a safe note in several other companies. And so, I feel good about this structure. It, like we kind of talked about, you're basically getting in early, and then whatever happens later, you're going to do better than the guys that come in later. So we can't exactly predict, safes, they convert when you have a priced round. Typically that's a Series A where you determine a price per share, and then everyone who came in before the Series A price per share round gets a lower price per share. So you think about if you're going to buy a company, not financial advice, I think what Xerox is like $5 a share now. If in the same format, you'd be able to buy it at $4 a share when it's publicly trading at $5. That's the functionality of a safe note. And I would say watch the video I put on our website if that's helpful. Use AI to kind of understand how safe notes work. That might be helpful. You can run different scenarios. Say, hey, this is the Hempitecture term sheet. What happens if they run a Series A at this valuation, and it'll model how that will convert for you guys. That's probably the best way to really run through the different scenarios. What happens to the investment today is absolutely dependent on what we do in the future and what subsequent liquidation or investors value us at. It will be preferential to whatever those terms are, but how preferential depends on, and what the exact value is depends on what that future investment round is.
For someone just learning about Hempitecture now, why is now the right time to get involved?
Yeah, we're at a serious inflection point. From what we're doing, we were at an inflection point, starting this way when we went from reselling to manufacturing. That was a step function in growth, bringing that to the United States. We're at a second inflection point of developing that commercial ready product. This is what's going to, naming names, when Stanford says, hey, we want to buy a bunch of insulation for our new residential hall, but it needs to be Class A rated. Otherwise, our insurance provider won't work with us. Well, that's business that we are losing. So when we're making this investment, we're making this CapEx investment, and in 3 months, 4 months, we're going to have this capability fully commissioned. That's an awesome changing of the company at a real inflection point that you guys can capitalize on. You're also catching us when we launched this round of in March, I believe, of 2024. We didn't have our DOE $8.4 million award. We didn't have our Tennessee Department of Agriculture $1 million award. And we got all of those things in these past 12 months, plus record-breaking sales, new product launches. We didn't change our valuation at all. We knew good stuff would happen. We knew we would build things that would justify and allow these investors to witness upside. And so I think that's where you guys can see that the momentum is increasing. And equity investing, in my opinion, comes down to, one, you have to interpolate, where was this company 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 months ago? What does that mean they could, where can we project that rate of growth to propel them into the future? And then what is this company's real ability to drive cash flow? We're operating in a real business where we produce materials, we make margin on those materials, and our ability to scale the production and sale of those materials is the name of the game. It's a true widget manufacturer in a lot of ways. And the fact that we can spread to new regions to manufacture, the fact that we can spread to new addressable markets, means that we can find the highest bidder for our line capacity and for what we produce in our manufacturing line. But that's the name of the game, is really trying to increase our revenue capacity, increase the quality of our products. And that's what's happening really over these next 3 to 4 months, which is exciting.
And this you touched on it in your answer just there, but what recent developments have positioned the company for accelerated growth?
Yeah, it's really, one is that ability to produce the ICC compliant product, which unlocks commercial construction. So that is going to be a huge driver of new growth. And then 2 is this state and federal funding that's going to really offset our need to raise capital to build new facilities. It is such a boon to be able to say, hey, this facility is going to cost $18 million, but 9.5 of it's already spoken for, and there's no equity exchange. that makes everybody's dollar today go so much further. So that's why I think you guys are really catching us at a very strong time, is we've got these non-equity, non-dilutive sources of funding. And by the way, there's a lot more of those coming. Our name is in the hat for a lot more funding. So I don't want people to get tired of hearing, oh, Hempitecture wins awards, because we may hear more of those announcements. I spend a lot of days writing grants, or AI is pretty good at saying, hey, this is Hempitecture's business. Can you write this grant proposal? And then boom, we win. That's great. I expect more of that to continue to happen. And I think that's why it's kind of like the government doesn't want to invest in a business that's got nothing. And a government doesn't want to invest in a business that's already winning and is already huge. And so we're kind of that boat that they know, like, if not for some federal support, this might not happen. And they really, if you looked at the Department of Energy's blueprint to decarbonization, it calls out bio-based insulation manufacturing. It calls out mandating that the government source exclusively from bio-based insulation manufacturers. Imagine that. Imagine if a law came down that said the government can only source sustainable building materials. Well, that would change business quite a ways. And I don't think we're too far from. I don't want to mandate anybody to do anything. I want people to have choice, and I want the best products to win. But that is the direction things are going. Penalizing people for having a carbon footprint. Not to mention, and this is something that we didn't talk about really, being able to monetize decarbonizing and sequestering carbon is coming as well. Carbon credits, we don't have that totally structured today, but in the near future, we'll be able to say, hey, your purchase accounts for this much of a carbon offset. We sold that carbon credit on exchange. Here it is, redeemed for your purchase. And that is going to really change the economics of our business too, when we can actually claim the value of the carbon sequestered. And don't worry, all the carbon that we've sequestered to date, we can still come back and get that money and sell those carbon credits. It just does take a little bit of a carbon accounting on your production chain to finally definitively say, hey, this third-party agency certified that this is the exact amount of carbon credit that this qualifies for. So a little bit of semantics, but good news is everything we sold in the past, we can claw back and get those carbon credits and monetize that value.
So coming back to this shift toward decarbonization from the federal government, a question, and it looks like we've got a couple of them here. How secure is the 8.4 million DOE funding given the current political environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. We were told all along that this was a done deal. These funds are obligated. I can't read the tea leaves of Washington. I'm an apolitical person. I really am. I won't get into. I don't like supporting the political parties we have right now. I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, honestly. I think what's happening is these DOE funds are being held hostage a little bit as leverage in negotiating. I don't think this administration wants to stamp out all domestic manufacturing that they've awarded. I think they want to hold this hostage and make people show up and try and beg and try and trade something to get this stuff re-lubricated and re-entering through. But a lot of the DOE stuff is moving through, and the bigger guys are going first. So a lot of these like lithium mining awards, a lot of these sustainable aviation fuel projects, you're seeing them a couple hydrogen projects are getting restarted. We're a little bit of a smaller award, so we're just not the first thing they look at. So I think it'll thaw and it will happen. There's not a lot of political will to redact funding that was going to create jobs, was going to help domestic manufacturing. I don't think that's what this administration necessarily wants. What I'd like to say is we have, as much as I say I don't hate, I am frustrated with both political parties in America. We have gotten benefits from both political parties. The Jobs Act from 2013 from the Obama-Biden administration is what allowed Reg CF to happen. Like, we wouldn't be able to raise capital via Reg CF without them signing that Jobs Act. And then when Trump got in office, he legalized industrial hemp cultivation and removed it from being a Schedule I substance to being an agricultural commodity. And that allowed industrial hemp to flourish. And then when Biden got back in, he put in these domestic manufacturing, the bipartisan infrastructure law, to try and stimulate domestic production of valuable products like insulation. And he created the Inflation Reduction Act, which provides a tax credit for buying insulation. So we've had wins from both admins, both sides of the aisle. So it's hard to predict the tea leaves, but I don't think things are going to go away. I think that's really hard to stomach. But if I see a Doge cut and says, say, some Idaho hemp insulation manufacturer was going to get this money, well, then maybe I'll be a little bit worried. But I haven't seen that yet. Nobody's reached out to us and said, you guys are on the chopping block. They just said, hey, there's a line. There's a line you got to wait in. And so we're waiting in the line.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's hard to answer a question when we really don't, the unknown is unknown. So I wonder if
I thought you said it so well, saying it's hard to read the tea leaves. Yes.
Yeah.
It really does feel that sort of ephemeral.
Yeah.
Where are you thinking the factory will be located?
Ooh, well, we are conducting a real estate search, so I don't want to tip anybody off who's going to front run and purchase art. And I would also say, in some respects, tariffs do support a manufacturing business like us. Like I don't. It's tough to, I'm a big partner. I love Canada. I think it's a great place. But if automotive nonwovens could no longer come across the border from Canada without paying a 25% tariff or paying 10% tariff, well, then people need to switch to domestic suppliers. Who's a domestic nonwovens manufacturer that has capacity? Hempitecture. So, there's opportunities a little bit from everywhere if you're savvy enough to find them. Sorry, what was that question? I didn't mean to get caught on that last one.
Oh, well, it was about the geography of your new factory. But you said
yeah, yeah, we've got a couple approved counties. So it's a little bit about putting it in so what I can say is that DOE award was meant for ex-coal mining communities or coal mining adjacent communities. So it was meant to kind of reinvigorate communities that had been suffering from the downsizing of the American coal industry. So basically any county in Northeast Tennessee that qualifies for that, we would have an ability to play in. And we're also kind of preferencing, some disadvantaged communities. There's socioeconomic tiers that they put each county into, because those are the communities that have inexpensive facilities. They have a lot of ag land around. We wouldn't put this in downtown Nashville. We're looking kind of more in the sticks a little bit, where the ag community is. And so yeah, there's a few areas, but Northeast Tennessee is where, I spent a lot of time living in Knoxville, Tennessee when I was working at Oak Ridge. I wasn't working. I was on a research fellowship on behalf of Hempitecture at Oak Ridge National Lab, kind of de-risking a lot of our products, helping our commercialization plan, understanding these fire rating process materials and processes to get these materials fire rated. So I know that area quite well. And I actually really love Northeast Tennessee. It's so good for shipping because you can get to the mid-Atlantic in a short amount of time. You can get to the Atlanta market, which is just growing like crazy. Tennessee is one of the most building permits per capita in the country. So, and then you get to the Midwest and it's not that far away either. So that's why we like Northeast Tennessee is where you can expect us. Abby, did we? Oh, gotcha.
No, we have, I want to thank everybody for staying long. We have, exceeded our time. However, we are here for the long run. So I want to thank everybody who's still here and asking questions. We do have plenty more questions to get through. Tommy, I don't know if you have a hard stop at any time.
No, I don't. And I'll do this for the 46 attendees. 46 is my lucky number. Hey, if you need to get in touch with me between now and the close, maybe I'll have to change my phone number once we close. You give me a call or text 973-943-9239. So we'll keep answering all these questions as long as Abby will. Abby's got a life too. Great. Now it's there in writing. But if you need to get in touch with me, that's, I'm just on my phone 24/7. That's the nature of the game. I have to be available to our customers, to our employees, to our investors. Give me a call. I'm happy to speak. But yeah, let's keep going.
Great. How is residential market using your products?
They're using it for cavity insulation in walls, cavity insulation in ceilings. I really want to call out that rigid continuous board plant panel. That has had huge adoption for us this year. We knew that product would be a winner, but we didn't exactly expect it to be this big. And that rigid board goes basically like a jacket around your house. Now, the one thing I do want to tease, and this is looking to the future, the next product that we believe we can create a hemp-based substitute for is drywall. Drywall is everywhere. It's made from gypsum, has huge embodied carbon. Not necessarily a product that builders love working with, pretty dusty. We think we can replace a lot of that mineral with hemp fiber, have a lighter product, have a much more decarbonized product. And I think that would be a huge opportunity. And we're certainly making Tennessee, designing Tennessee with the capabilities to produce a drywall replacement product or a drywall analogous product.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you see Hempitecture expanding into places like Hawaii and Puerto Rico?
No. I hate to rain the parade on the Hawaii people. Hawaii is not as bad as Australia. People at our office know I cannot stand the Aussie inquiries because they come to us with so much energy and say, we want to buy this, we want to buy a container. Can you do this for me? And then you just show them the cost of the container to get from California to Australia, and they go, "Oh, that's more than fiberglass. The shipping cost of the container." It's like, so if I gave you the money, the material free, you still wouldn't want it because you don't even want to pay the cost of the shipping container. Hawaii, we have been installed in Hawaii, but we need the customer to organize the shipping. Basically, it goes to Oregon, goes to California, gets put in a container with their other building materials, and then gets moved there. Puerto Rico, I think, would be the same thing. But it would just be, I just can't promise that we're going to start manufacturing in those regions given the size of the market. I don't think that's where our heads are at right now.
I appreciate your transparency.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laura, for your questions. This one, she's asked, can you give us a sense of what percentage of your income is building products and other industries you've been mentioning?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I guess I was going to give you our overall revenue number, but I guess that's financials. But so I can't share that. We do take click shipping income. So when customers buy from us, the shipping, they pay that as a separate line item, but it ends up being a fair amount, maybe 15-20% of the transaction volume. But so if you were to say 100% of hemp wool, 100% of revenue, 15% of that is shipping income. Probably 60% of that is hemp wool, and maybe 25% of that is toll manufacturing. And that'll probably grow a little bit this year. We're going to grow our toll manufacturing faster than we'll grow our hemp wool this year, just because we really only toll manufactured for like 7 months last year. We had just onboarded the customer. Now this year we've been toll manufacturing them for, the whole year. And they want to move more of their business to us, which is exciting. So I would say, and honestly, that's kind of the buffer, right? Someone asked, a question about a huge risk. Construction is cyclical. Construction is very cyclical. I think we're benefiting from, people really built post-COVID. People are now kind of finishing projects, getting installation, and now new home starts. We're a little bit skeptical. That's why we spun up this toll manufacturing business, so that we've got all these other industries that we're serving, because we don't want to get caught in like an 08, 09 building recession where there's a glut. And, all the data is saying that the country is massively underbuilt. And then in the long run, we're going to have to really upsize our production of residential homes. But that doesn't mean you couldn't have a year or two where it hits a pause or a freeze. And so we don't want to have that type of risk. People just stop building homes for a year or two, and then we actually kind of had that thought at one point, January, February, people were a little bit skittish and sales weren't necessarily blowing out year over year. But then, like I said, we had that huge April, and now we're standing really tall over last year to date. And so that, I don't think 2025 is the year that's going to happen. But that's why we like these other industries is, building is pretty cyclical, and it's one of the first things to go when the economy turns down. So right now we're about 20 to 25% toll manufacturing revenue.
Are there any plans to produce actual hemp lumber?
No, there are not. And a plug for a good friend of mine and another company is Kentucky's Hempwood, and I've toured their factory, and they have a really interesting way of creating like dimensional, like 4-inch by 4-inch posts out of hemp. Basically, the hemp stalk really cemented together. But the lumber is tough. When you're going for something that's structural, it has a much higher tolerance of engineering and compliance and performance. Two, you'd be using some type of glue or laminate that could be a little iffy. You don't really want to be huffing too much glue in a product, in my opinion. And then three, you'd be solving for something that's kind of good already. Timber is a decent structural material that has a somewhat reasonable environmental impact. And so I don't necessarily see that being the application of hemp.
Fair enough. Those are good points. Does the business plan to supply major chains like Home Depot, Lowe's, or similar, considering production limitations?
Hmm. 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 We think about this, but I'm going to say no at this point. I don't think we need to. If we were to, the problem with those guys, and my last startup, worked really closely with Amazon and looking at distribution. We were a computer kit. Fry's was a big computer distribution, and you kind of are at their whims, right? They need you to have a truck here all of a sudden because they sold some, and so you're contractually obligated to get it there, or they have too much inventory in this store and now they're mad at you because they didn't sell through it, and so maybe you need to take some back. Oh, and by the way, they're charging 30-40% margin and they want to mark up the retail, and then they don't want you listing below their MSRP. Like I said, we built that technology platform so that we can control the sales process with these guys. We control the interfacing, and I think Home Depot and Lowe's are great for, hey, I need a couple of bats of insulation to throw in here because we had to take some out, or maybe my sink broke and the fiberglass got wet or whatever. So I think they're great for like kind of spot fixes. The reality is nobody's buying a home's worth of insulation from off the shelves at Home Depot. They're going through a subcontractor, and the subcontractor is working through a pro builder source type of relationship, or they deal with us in a manner where we're going to ship it in a truck directly to you. And I keep saying this, the name of the game, but the name of the game is you don't want to ship that product more than you have to. So if we have to ship it to Home Depot and then it goes to the job site, and if it's a truckload's worth anyway, that truck should have just gone from our factory to their job site, because then you're paying every time someone has to touch it and unload it, you're paying two driving instances. So distribution, and I think it's great that you can go to Home Depot and pick up a can of paint and a Milwaukee drill set, but I don't think for insulation for new home purchases it's that important. I really don't. No offense to any Home Depot execs on the call.
A related question, slightly different, but have you engaged in any specific large commercial developers, AEC, or interior design vendors to purchase commercial grade products?
That's a good question. So I think what you're asking is, are we taking pre-sales of our ICC code compliant product that we're developing? And the answer is not yet, because it's a little bit hard to price it and commit to a delivery date. And but we are absolutely engaging. I spent 2 years in New York recently, helping us kind of develop that NYSERDA relationship and grow out some East Coast components of our business. And one of the benefits of being there was I was able to attend a lot of lunch and learns and kind of building material presentation days at some of the highest end architecture firms. I was in the One World Trade Center. I was in World Trade Center 7, or not 7. That's the one that fell down. One of the ones right next to it where SOM is, and the writing on the wall is they want this. They're ready for it. They're not going to buy it before it's fully launched and before we have that ICC ES report in hand. But I'm confident that once we have that, we'll make a lot of noise, and then the orders will start to roll in from the commercial guys. It was a little bit of we didn't want to make a big splash and talk to these commercial guys and say, hey, come buy our product, put it in the next, Google headquarters. And then they're like, okay, but you don't have your Class A rating and you promised us the moon, but now you can't deliver a Class A product. We didn't want to come out. We wanted to hang with the residential world where they knew what they were getting with us. We'll change that strategy once we get that ICCES rating. We will be talking to these guys and saying, hey, this is prime time ready. This can go in anywhere from Madison Square Garden to a van, tiny home, or, we always say that, like we sell the gamut. We sell people who are building, triple lot homes on Palms Boulevard in Venice Beach, California. And we sell to the kid who's touring the national parks this summer and is insulating their van. So we'll sell everywhere and in between, but focusing on that top echelon of commercial construction, we really want to have all of our ducks in a row so that when we make that introduction, they know they can take us seriously.
Getting a couple shout outs to you, Tommy, for doing a great job today.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and also, to just say how far along you guys have come as a company. Anyway, next question. Do studies in real life situations continue to show your products to be mold resistant?
Do studies in real life? Well, part of and again, I'm just going to give you completely honest answers. A feature and bug of bio-based insulation is its biodegradation, right? So the thing about styrofoam is that's going to last 1,000 years in a landfill. That's probably not ideal. You want a product that can return to the earth, but you don't want that product returning to earth while it's in your wall. So, no, we don't have any mold issues or problems being reported, but that's because we're very intentional about how we ask customers to design their wall assembly. Where do you have that vapor barrier protecting any wind-driven rain from the outside? Are you going to put an interior air or vapor control layer if you're in, say, a very humid climate like Florida or Louisiana or Texas or something like that? There is some consideration to have that. The Class A fire rated product that we've been talking about that for a lot here will also have a fungicide in it that will improve its performance and imperviousness to mold. But it hasn't been an issue so far. We always say, and these products are kind of like sponge. Like if you put hemp in water, it just kind of diffuses through the panel rather than stays locked in one location. And that's a feature for kind of inhibiting mold growth, that there's not like a concentration of dampness. It's more of just diffuse, and then it can take time to expel that vapor. So you want a vapor open wall assembly. That's a very important rule of housing construction. And it will actually reduce the ability for mold to grow on, say, your plywood or OSB, or maybe even the paper facing on your drywall, because it has the ability to remove moisture. When I was at Oak Ridge and I was using their heat air moisture chamber in the Building Technologies Research Integration Center, we did a simulated test where we built a wall. On one side, we put our hemp wool. On the other side, we put store-bought fiberglass. We put no vapor barrier because I wanted to maximize the amount of moisture we were driving through that wall. And then we put it in a chamber, and the chamber simulated Atlanta weather for 40 days or maybe 45 days. And so, 70 degrees inside, 30 to 40 degrees at night on the outside, and then maybe 60 degrees, really trying to see what it does. When we opened that wall and saw what was inside, the fiberglass side, because fiberglass doesn't necessarily absorb moisture at all, it had beaded moisture on the back of the plywood. It had hard water moisture on the back of the plywood. On the hemp side, there was no moisture on the plywood, and you could see that the moisture was actually moving back through the hemp bat. Now, we definitely recommend vapor barriers because that's going to limit the amount of moisture drive you get through your wall. But I thought it was indicative to what happens when water does get through there. And when that condensation does happen, you're going to have one product that lets it just stick on the back of the plywood. And that's a structural piece that eventually is going to get exposed to rot. And you have another product that helps alleviate that buildup of excess moisture from that structural sheathing. So, how these function in walls is pretty stark difference when you have a product that is hydroscopic and will really suck up moisture like the hemp wool.
Kind of related. How do architectural specifications fit into the sales strategy of building products?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's something that we've leaned into previously with sales personnel, is really controlling the spec. And the way it works is someone says, hey, we need, bio-based hemp wool or equivalent insulation. And so a lot of times you need to have like 2 or 3 products to be able to source from. Otherwise, it's kind of, and this is a little bit my understanding of Rockwool's strategy success is they've really controlled the spec at the architecture level, where architects are designing homes that the only feasible product is something in Rockwool's catalog. So there is a little bit of a game that gets played there of controlling the spec, as they say, and making sure when the architect writes the materials and equivalents that they would accept for the project, making sure that your product is going to fit in that build. The good news is our product catalog is very, very similar to Rockwool. When it comes to the boards, when it comes to the bats, when it comes to the R value, the friction fit, it's installed nearly identically. So I think, we'll be able to follow their spec quite tightly. But it really also comes from architects wanting to use this and wanting to be thoughtful about the materials and write specs that include you guys or call us out specifically. And the good news is they're out there. Architects love hearing about new products. They love adding sustainability options in front of clients. And so I think, when like I said, when we have that ICC ES report, the architects are going to really like putting us forward in front of clients.
Could Hempitecture be formed into roof shingles or outdoor shiplaps type products?
Yes, actually. And there was a slide that I cut from our deck here that did show kind of a corrugated siding product that was made with compressed hemp and a resin. We don't make that today. We don't really have a manufacturing process for that today, although we could make the substrate and then kind of hit it with a heat molder to get it in that shape. And if you were to look up, there's a home in the UK called it's like the what is it called? I can Google it right now. But just look up like UK hemp fiber corrugated siding and you'll find the it starts with an M. I'm so tempted to Google it right now. I won't do it though, because I know we got other important things to do. Yeah, it's a product Maddie's been very, very supportive of. And I think it's potential. There's definitely potential for siding. And, we're starting with what we know best, which is inside that wall assembly. But like I said, we can get to the drywall side and then maybe we can get to the exterior side with an actual siding product.
Let's see. Is there potential for biodegradable polymer products in the future?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of interest in that and PLAs kind of using other bio-based inputs to replace the petrochemical polys that otherwise would exist in it. So I do see that one. I'm reading Cindy's question here. I pulled up the Q&A.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I wanted to ask you to touch on your thoughts around fungicides for mold control.
Yeah, so that's interesting because she seems to suggest that adding the fungicide could actually contribute to mold growth. So there's an ASTM test for this where they totally expose it to moisture. They kind of spritz it and then they cover it to see what happens. And the borate-based solution is that exact same fungicide. So that has the fungicide properties in it. It's passing. Like I said, we made prototypes and we put it through the ASTM E84 for the fire resistance test. And then we also did, I think it's the 739 maybe for the fungicide, for the mold growth test. And it performed well on both. So Cindy's and Boris. Okay, good. Yeah. So that's the extent of the fungicide. We would never want to put something that would be so harmful to biological life that it would potentially risk the installer. On our homepage, you see children installing our product, and that's the truth. Children have installed our product, not supporting child labor, just saying children can help their parents install our installation and have done so. And we just think that's what we're going for. We want building materials that people can get up close and personal with. And so we wouldn't introduce a chemical that was going to be super detrimental to anyone coming into contact with it.
Is PFAS contamination an issue for hemp farming? And if so, how do you screen for it?
PFAS. I know I've seen that. Okay. Is this like trace plastics, like kind of how they find that like we've got trace
it's like Teflon, right? So like the non-stick part of non-stick pans is the PFAS, and it's broadly, unfortunately, I know too much about it, but it's probably an environmental contaminant, a problem for a wide range of different products and from everything from like Lululemon leggings to sewage treatment plants.
Yeah, that's a good question. The poly, like I said, we use 8% by weight polyester in our hemp wool. So it's not a ton of exposure to that. But my understanding is that is an inert polyester at that point that is not necessarily going to, I don't think it would be like something as extreme as Teflon, that you put in the microwave that you can then kind of activate. So my understanding is it is inert. I will say, because we talked about this before with the PLA and looking for a bio-based, we do want to move away from the polyester, mostly because of its carbon footprint. And it's kind of a higher cost. It's a higher cost fiber than our hemp is. And so we want to move away from that to something that is bio-based so that we can realize the carbon savings. And then for our plant panel product, we actually use a slightly different polyester, and it's a recycled poly. So that product is 100% natural and recycled fibers. It's only the hemp wool that has a small amount of virgin polyester in it.
How comparable is hemp wool compared to fiberglass bat insulation price-wise?
Yeah, good question. I always get this, and I'm like, I wish they would put their prices on their website like we do, because we show you exactly what our price per square foot is for any product any day. For them, because they don't sell to customers, you're kind of at the whim of their local distributor. So I would say let's use the R13 3.5-inch bat. And that's what goes in 2x4 construction. We're at $1.29 today. We sold that at Earth Day. If you guys didn't catch that sale, $1.01. So we still sell it every now and then at a pretty low price. So we're anywhere between $1 to $1.29 on the R13. Fiberglass, you get about 80 cents a square foot. So they're definitely lower than us. They produce huge scale. A lot of that's free glass that they're starting with until they can no longer have any more cullet in their supply chain. But if you were to look at mineral wool is $1.15, $1.25. We're really within arm's length of mineral wool, and you see people speccing. That's what always surprises me. Like fiberglass is the cheapest, but then you see people go to mineral wool and pay quite a premium for that product. And I don't totally, fiberglass actually has a better LCA than mineral wool in a lot of respects. So I'm not totally sure why people are so willing to pay for a less environmentally and less performative, not equally performative, less environmentally, but in higher price product in mineral wool. I think that people would be like, wow, mineral wool and hemp wool, both of these products are more expensive than fiberglass. One is extremely sustainable and one is more or less same sustainable. Fiberglass is kind of like, what I've been told kind of under the table is if you're an architect and you put fiberglass in front of your client, you're not really going above and beyond. You're not really helping them. You're not really showing them anything new. If you put in rock wool and can talk about its sound properties, or you talk about the comfort board rock wool, then you're kind of bringing something with a little more riz, as the kids would say, right? A little more pizzazz. So that's kind of my understanding is rock wool has enjoyed this really great marketing rush of being a new kind of better than fiberglass. And because everyone's so sick of fiberglass, they wanted something just a little bit better. So that's what we want to be. We want to be the insulation that's, hey, we're better than fiberglass. Yeah, maybe we're a little bit more expensive, but your insulation cost is really only 2% of your building project anyway. So if we're 10% more expensive, it's what a 0.2% change in the total construction cost. It's probably tenable for most people.
I'm not totally sure if I understand this question here, but it says radiant barrier foil / reflective paint comparisons.
Yeah, the radiant foil seems to be somewhat polarizing in the building industry. So basically what you're talking about is there's like an R60 really thin piece of metal foil that people believe has intense energy efficiency potential, and other people believe that it's got nothing and it's kind of a misnomer. So I don't have too much of a stake in that. Yeah, so radiant foil is something that's out there. I don't see it getting a lot of use though, so I'm not too concerned about it as a product. Yeah.
Okay. So there are some important regulatory tailwinds that you're positioned for. Can you speak to this and the upside it gives you?
Yeah, regulatory tailwinds. So, imagine if people like, there's so many things. So we talk about like mandating low embodied carbon materials. They could, give tax credits or incentives for low embodied carbon materials. They could penalize, like if you look at a couple cities are doing this. If you're, I believe Washington, D.C. kind of pioneered this. If you're in the bottom 10% of energy efficiency in Washington, D.C., I don't know if they use a WOFE score or what they do. They actually penalize you and you have to pay a penalty. So you're having to increase your energy efficiency of your building to stay ahead of your peers. Now imagine if they did that and they kind of benchmarked you on embodied carbon. And that's I hope I've kind of driven that home, is energy efficiency and green building has totally put its focus on embodied carbon and being really honed in on what the inputs of that building are before you even occupy it, before you even move in. And then others, California did something like, buying clean, buying low embodied carbon. There's a federal procurement initiative that was buying clean, buying low embodied carbon. So I do see a lot of regulatory push. But then I also think there's going to be support for just the insulation industry as a whole, right? We talked about that 25C tax credit. That's for retrofits. Hey, I claimed that. I hope you guys claim a 25C tax credit. I did it 1 year for insulation, 1 year for a heat pump. That's good stuff. I think the industry more broadly, people are like, and some states will do low interest rate loans to add an insulation upgrade. Energy has become a huge topic in our economy, in our country, and people want to preserve it as much as possible. And being able to put insulation in your building is one of the easiest ways. It's an investment up front, but it has savings over time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There are regulatory tailwinds from both the carbon specific side as well as just the general energy efficiency side that we're looking at.
Kind of on a different topic, and you may have touched on it earlier, but this person says they joined late. So do you source your hemp from local farmers, or is it processed by industrial hemp companies and then sent to Hempitecture? And that kind of is a related question, so you can answer both at once, I think. Is the source of raw material assured? That is, what is the yield in tons of dry biomass per acre of the farmer? Is the value of per ton of hemp bales sufficient for them to choose hemp over another crop? Anyway.
Yeah, good questions. Good questions. Check out the USDA 2024 Ag Hemp Survey, because they really get into people that grew for grain, people that grew for fiber, people that grew for herd, what their yield per acre was. And so that's hard data you can kind of go off of. And I don't know how well farmers fill out that survey, but at least it's something. To answer your question, we buy from the processor currently. So the farmer from Idaho, the farmer from Montana, they sell it to the processor, and then we buy it from the processor. Now in our Tennessee plant, that's the key distinction, is we're going to be doing that processing under the same roof that we do this insulation and product manufacturing. And so that represents huge opportunities for us to lower our COGS, because we're not shipping it from the processor. We're not paying the processor's margin. We get to take the waste and turn it into energy. So that's kind of an exciting development on the processing side. I think we asked about expelling the supply of hemp. No, I don't see that happening. Like I said, we've never hit the bottom of the barrel of our suppliers. They've always we call them up, say, hey, we need a truck in a week, and it's there. So I think we're pretty good on supply for now.
There's movement for 3D printed housing using recycled plastics and other materials. Will hemp or Hempitecture be used in the 3D printing market?
That's a question that I think, here's my thought on 3D printing. It's been a buzz for a while, Icon 3D printing, right? They've been talking about it for a while, and it hasn't really gotten mainstream yet. And I know, and Belinda Carr makes these videos that are really best in class on YouTube about assessing all new building technology. She does really good dives on 3D printing, and she's done dives on our product and compared to other products. I think she's given great reviews that are totally independent and thoughtful. But I don't see 3D printing necessarily being the answer in the long run, especially if robotics come around. Because what you're talking about 3D printing is really like, how do we take labor out of construction? And if you can put robotics there, then you could maybe do that. And, a robot can install insulation quite well, either blow-in or bat insulation. But again, I wouldn't take my opinion on 3D printing as gospel by any chance. What could happen, and I have seen some grants and some decent funding go towards this, is using hempcrete as a 3D printing material. So those of you that know hempcrete, it's a different building product that Hempitecture also sells. It's actually what we started doing was hempcrete. It's a non-structural insulation infill made from a composite of hemp and limestone. So, maybe people start 3D printing with that, but it doesn't have the structural membrane in it. So I don't know. I think 3D printing is something that sounds great, but we just haven't seen it come to fruition. It's been about 10 years. And so we should have gotten some little further progress, I think.
So I want to thank everybody for sticking around as long as you have. I know we've gone quite a bit past our original time. We are getting toward the end of our questions. So if you have a lingering question, now is the time to get it in there. Okay, so how many people are on your sales team and who are the primary customers? Home builders, general contractors, etc.?
Cool. And I see these too. So let's run through these pretty quickly because you've been so generous with your time, Abby. I really appreciate it. Okay. We really have a very finite sales team. We've floated between, I help sales. I certainly help sales. One full timer. We've had some other people come in to support as well, but we rely on our ambassadors a fair amount. I know someone asked what percent of our sales volume is ambassadors, probably 10 to 15, maybe 20% out there. But the beauty is we don't need a huge sales team. We've got really good resource documentation on our website. We've got an AI chatbot that takes in questions and gets back to people. And we're going to improve that so that people can actually look up their exact orders with the AI chatbot and get information that way. So we don't need a huge, massive sales team at this stage. We've got a great online tool that helps people understand how much they need, what it's going to cost to ship, where they can pick up. So that's kind of the beauty of our model is we're not trying to have a bunch of salespeople hitting the pavement as they go through. And then, so direct, most of our product is sold direct. We have a couple ambassadors that are quite active, usually ones with like their own online store. They help outfit someone who's like, hey, I want to buy a bunch of different home building products from paints to toilets to insulation. And so they'll broker the insulation sale on our behalf, which is nice. Yeah.
Did you want to touch on how does where does your sales volume come from?
Yeah. That's kind of.
Okay. That was done.
Yeah. Sorry.
How does hemp wool compare to rock wool in terms of sound insulation?
Very similar. Very similar. And the reason is, I didn't talk about this. Thermal mass. We talked about fiberglass. This is what I was thinking about with the foil. So R value, I always kind of compare it to like height on a dating app. Sometimes R value is the only thing people shop by. It's just like one number that they can see. If it's below this, I'm not going to do it. If it's above this, I'm going to do it. So R value is one thing, but thermal mass is actually quite important for the performance of your insulation because thermal mass is the ability of that bat to hold heat and not allow it to cross the wall. And then when the gradient evens out, then it will expel that heat and disperse that heat and diffuse that heat. So it's really good for smoothing out the heating cooling cycles of your day. And hemp wool and rock wool are both similar in that because they have similar mass to them. They're not like fiberglass or cellulose. It's a little bit flimsier, a little bit lighter weight. And with that mass comes sound insulation as well. So we have voice actors, we have musicians. Well, one of my favorite bands, I won't give his name, one of my favorite bands, he made a recording studio in California and he bought our hemp wool and he bought our plant panel. And he outfitted his recording studio with it. So, and the feedback's been awesome for sound attenuation. And that's the truth. Like in our factory, it can be pretty noisy. And then you step in our little halfway hemp wool built house and it immediately becomes quiet because when you have a nice, thick, dense insulation like that, it's very good for attenuating sound. And our STC ratings on the website, you can see what that testing looks like.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here today. I want to remind you that time is running out on the WeFunder campaign. So head on over to WeFunder. I'm going to drop the link in the chat one more time to decide if it's right for you. Any last comments, Tommy?
No, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for being such a willing audience and hanging with us till the end. Abby, great job hosting, great questions, people. I hope I gave great answers. I gave you my phone number so that we can chat and follow up, but this is a passion. We're not stopping until hemp insulation and hemp building materials are available in every state and are competitive with other products. And your capital to make it happen is just makes everything come true. And it really is just awesome to see the support we've gotten from the public. We put this out here the first time. We had no idea. We had no idea if anyone would invest in it. We thought they would. A lot of people said, "Hey, are you a penny stock? When are you going to IPO? Like, can we invest in your upside?" We said, "Okay, we think there's interest in there. We think the public wants this." And when you guys show up and when you guys invest in us, I can promise you it just makes our team want to work harder, makes us want to deliver for you guys, makes us want to have something that's going to create sustainable change. I see so much talk about impact investing, and you open up these portfolios and the stocks they own are Microsoft, Amazon, and Tesla. And it's like, those are the most valuable companies in the world. How is that impactful, owning those businesses? What you guys are doing, you're putting capital towards something that wouldn't happen without your capital. So the impact is huge. And farmers feel it, our workers feel it, homeowners feel it. So we're just beyond thankful and grateful for the support we've gotten.
Couple of things that we're going to want to follow up on. We will be sending a replay link. So if you missed any part of today's presentation, you'll get a follow-up email. And we'll also make an effort to post on the WeFunder page some of the links that we talked about today during the event. So Emily, can look forward to a follow-up email.
Awesome. And we can listen to 2x, right? Because that's my big thing. I was listening in 2x speed, so you don't have to wait up for the whole thing.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Tommy.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.